Good afternoon. My name is Tim Isaacs. I am Executive Director at the Center for Teaching the Rule of Law at Roanoke College in Salem, Virginia. I want to congratulate all of you and your teacher for coming to the finals, and I want to introduce you to my partners today. Darcy, we'll start with you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Darcy Kern. I am a professor of history at Southern Connecticut State University, and we're very excited to hear from you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Gass. I'm director of the Center for School Reform at Pioneer Institute. It's a Boston-based think tank that does research on K-12 education reform.
And if you would introduce yourselves.
Hi, we're very excited to testify for you today. My name is Vanessa Puentes.
Good afternoon, I'm Kareem Alvarado.
Good afternoon, my name is Alani Torres. We are coached by teacher Mr. Zach Slinka, and we represent Chicago Hope Academy.
Well, welcome all of you and thank your teacher for working with you. You are Unit 1, Question 2. I am going to read both the Unit 1 question and this number 2 question with the follow-ups. What are the philosophical and historical foundations of the American political system? Question 2, Parliament passed the Habeas Corpus Act of 1679. What is habeas corpus? And to what extent, if any, is it essential to the principle of limited government? How has the writ of habeas corpus evolved in the United States? Under what circumstances, if any, might the writ of habeas corpus place an unreasonable burden on the government? Timer, you may begin.
The Habeas Corpus Act of 1679 was modeled after the appearance of habeas corpus in the Magna Carta. The purpose of habeas corpus is to prevent the government from taking advantage of their power and unlawfully imprisoning people without reason or court. The framers applied this in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. We agree that habeas corpus is essential to limited government. President Dwight D. Eisenhower profoundly once said, "Why are we proud? We are proud of, first of all, because of the beginning of this nation, a man could walk upright no matter who he or she is. He could walk right up and meet his friend or his enemy. He does not feel fear because that enemy might be in the position of greater power, that he can suddenly be thrown in jail and to rot there without charges and with no resource to justice. We have habeas corpus act and we respect it." President Eisenhower agrees that habeas corpus is fundamental to democracy. Judicial rights can be found in the Fifth Amendment, which protects the confiscation of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. Further protections also found in the Sixth Amendment rights to speedy and public trial, the right to be tried in impartial jury, a formal indictment, the right to confront and call witnesses, and the right to an attorney. Under a tyrannical government, the lack of habeas corpus, citizens live in fear because they can be thrown into prison without charge or justice. As a nation, we do not fear because our judicial rights are protected by habeas corpus to limit the government's actions.
British habeas corpus has evolved in the United States through its recurring special history. The writ of habeas corpus was first suspended by President Lincoln during the Civil War. It was limited to arrests in certain areas of military transports and expanded for the arrest of disloyal conduct in Union territory. It was later expanded in the Reconstruction era for the arrest of runaway slaves. The writ of habeas corpus is not limited to the president, as seen after the attack on Pearl Harbor. It was suspended by Governor Joseph Poindexter during World War II. It was recently suspended by President Bill Clinton through the Anti-Terrorism Bill and by President Bush during the global war on terror following 9/11. The suspension clause gives Congress the authority to suspend habeas corpus, though it is commonly introduced by the executive branch. Habeas corpus has been suspended throughout American history for national security purpose. The controversial suspension of habeas corpus has been carried out multiple times for what was believed to be at that time the most appropriate for the nation.
The writ of habeas corpus is necessary to protect the judicial rights of the people. Suspending the writ of habeas corpus can at times conflict with our Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment rights. Any violation to the Bill of Rights is controversial, and at times suspending the writ of habeas corpus places unreasonable burdens on the government in a national security matter. The suspension of the writ of habeas corpus is constitutional and is mentioned in suspension clause of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, which states, "The privileges of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion to the public safety may require it. In cases of national emergency, the writ places unreasonable burdens on the government because it suspends the constitutional rights of the people. Congress alone has the power to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. Its suspension would be discussed and agreed upon by legislators opposed to a single executive. The president does not have the independent authority to suspend the writ. When Abraham Lincoln introduced the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus, he did so in light of Southern secession from the Union, which falls under the Constitution's definition of in cases of national emergency, rebellion, or invasion of the public safety may require it. Certainly, the suspension of any right or freedom granted in the Constitution is a momentous act that should be carried out only in the face of dire and unanticipated circumstances. Thank you, and we are now ready for your questions.
Okay, thank you. My first question, what are some other parts of the Constitution intended to protect people against arbitrary incarceration? You mentioned a few, but could you go into a little more depth on those, please?
Another example would be the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, which protects citizens against without the right to a
Amendment 4 protects from unreasonable searches or seizures.
Okay.
The revolutionary and founding generations were raised as British subjects and educated under English law. Could you talk about some of the ways in which British law shaped the framers' understanding of constitutionalism?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
Sorry. The revolutionary and founding generations were raised as British subjects and educated under English law. Could you talk about some of the ways in which British law shaped the framers' understanding of constitutionalism?
Based on the British law, it was basically a tyrannical government. So the framers did not want to go under like the same laws as they did. Maybe there were some things that they liked, like habeas corpus, because during that time they forced the king to sign a contract so that he doesn't overuse his power. So that was one thing that they really liked and they really needed to use so that they don't follow the same footsteps in the British tyrannical government. So they wanted to find ways to prevent that.
I'm curious, you guys talked about national security and how the president doesn't have unilateral authority to suspend habeas corpus. Who determines when there is a threat to national security and when a writ of habeas or when habeas corpus should be suspended? How do we determine that threat to national security?
National security is determined by the Congress. They determine when to suspend the writ of habeas corpus, and examples of in cases of rebellion or invasion to the public safety, things that will affect the freedom and rights of the people.
How are state governments impacted by habeas corpus requirements?
Wait, can you expand on your question a little bit? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you.
Can you expand a little bit on your question?
Yes, are there, let me see if I can rephrase it a little bit. Are there times in American history when states have suspended habeas corpus? And what were the reasons for doing so? And what were the consequences of that action?
Yes, I stated in my question that Governor Joseph Poindexter suspended habeas corpus after the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Who was that?
Governor Joseph Poindexter.
Okay. Other examples? Okay, well, we'll move on.
Yeah, thinking about this issue at a state and at a state level, really, sometimes this may impact certain communities more than others because people may not be familiar with the process of habeas corpus and filing procedures for that. Is there a way that we can better educate people about their habeas corpus rights? And particularly people who are perhaps already imprisoned. So my question is, how do we educate people about their habeas corpus rights?
Police officers often inform the people that they're arresting about their rights with the Miranda rights, such as you have the right to a lawyer and yeah.
So should we include mention of habeas corpus in Miranda rights?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. The people need to know that they have to be imprisoned for a reason and they should be aware of habeas corpus.
Can you talk a little bit about the concern that the founders had about sort of basic civil liberties, the Bill of Rights, and if there are components of the Bill of Rights that that are, very careful in respecting civil liberties?
So what is the question?
So are there, can you talk a little bit about the founders and how they thought about use the Bill of Rights to sort of establish basic limitations on government power and respect individual civil liberties?
Okay, so the Bill of Rights was actually a big disagreement during the time because anti-federalists really wanted it so that they could be able to feel secure in the government. And the Federalists felt like it was not necessary because they felt that the Constitution already limited the government enough. So they felt that the Bill of Rights was just not necessary. But since they needed the anti-federalists on their side for the Constitution, they felt that it was necessary to put in the Bill of Rights so that they feel like their rights are being secured.
Great, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a few minutes to give you some feedback. Darcy or Jamie, would you like to start?
Sure, I can go ahead and start. Look, I thought that was really interesting. In your opening statement, you mentioned the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendments. You talked about how this is foundational to democracy. You quoted Eisenhower. You mentioned a state governor, suspending habeas corpus after World War II. And I thought in your follow-up questions, two things. Vanessa, I thought you did a really good job pausing and asking for clarification on questions. I think that's a really good skill to have. And I think it shows a level of maturity, just saying, you know, I don't, could you repeat the question or rephrase the question, whatever. And then I also liked how you thought about including habeas corpus in the Miranda rights. I think that's really fascinating. You know, having the police tell people that they are arresting, that they have this procedural right. So I thought that was a really good answer to my question. So good job.
Yeah, I want to echo that. This is a very difficult question, and I want to thank you and your teacher for all your hard work. It's difficult material. It's in some instances material that students don't get until they're in college. And I thought that the way in which you use the quotes from Eisenhower and discuss due process and Lincoln and suspending habeas corpus during the Civil War, I thought was important. I thought that the way in which the way you asked us to clarify our questions, that's, I think, an important thing to do. And I thought that your discussion, my question about the Bill of Rights and the importance that the founders used the Bill of Rights as a way to preserve civil liberties or restrain government. Thought that your discussion of the Federalist paper, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, was very good and very clear. And of course, those kinds of decisions about civil liberties are exactly the same kinds of ones that they sought to enshrine in the Constitution. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I would echo many of the things that my colleagues have said. Your reference to Magna Carta, using that as a springboard for the American Constitution, quotations by Eisenhower, constitutional references, not only to the Constitution, but to the Bill of Rights, references to the Federalist Papers. I would encourage you to continue that process of thoughtful thinking where you pause and you ask for clarification. There's nothing wrong with that. I also thought that you did a very good job of providing lots of sort of contemporary or 20th century examples to illustrate how the habeas corpus has sort of evolved from Magna Carta to the present. So thank you very much for your time, and thank your teacher for all the work done to help you get to this point. Bye-bye.